On the day I was to marry the crown prince, my mother chose me to replace my younger sister and marry into the kingdom of Zhang. I boarded the palanquin to Zhang without even removing my wedding gown. Not looking back. In my previous life, my family had been excited about my upcoming marriage to the crown prince, and they chose to send my sister to the kingdom instead. Unexpectedly, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. The Emperor of Zhang was a foolish man, and he gave my sister to his personal eunuch as his wife. My sister was tortured to death by the eunuch, calling out for her mother as she died. Mother's hair turned white in a single night after learning of this, and she claimed that I should have been the one sent to the kingdom of Zhang. After our father and brothers failed in their military campaign against Zhang, they suggested trading me for my sister's body. The crown prince said my sister was the one he loved, and forced me to go to Zhang to bring her back. I was 8 months pregnant when I was sent to the border. Due to the bumpy journey, I went into labor early and begged them to find a doctor to assist me. They dismissed me, saying I was just jealous of my sister and that I was not to be given any care. In the end, I gave birth with great difficulty, and I died on the way to Zhang. When I woke again, I had returned to the day I was to marry the crown prince. On that very day, a decree arrived, demanding that a woman from the Lice and her family be sent for the marriage alliance with Zhang. When the decree arrived at our home, my sister Lice and her only glanced at it before throwing herself into mother's arms, crying, "Mother, I don't want to go to Zhang. I don't want to leave you." Mother looked at her with tender affection, but when she turned to look at me, there was far less warmth in her gaze. I took the decree from her hands and said, "I will go to Zhang. Let Lice and her marry the crown prince." In my previous life, I hadn't accepted the decree. Since I was about to marry into the Eastern Palace within the hour, my family decided, with great reluctance, to send Lysandra in my place to Zhang. In order to make things easier for Lysandra, Mother took all of my dowry and half of our family's wealth to use as her dowry, hoping the royal family of Zhang would treat her well. But Zhang was a mighty kingdom that had never respected our Chu kingdom. When the Emperor of Zhang received my sister, he immediately gave her to his chief eunuch. The eunuch, a twisted man, took all of Lysandra's wealth and tortured her to death. When Mother found out, she was struck with grief, and her hair turned white in a single night. She said, "I should have sent Serafina instead." After our father and brothers failed miserably in their war against Zhang, they hastily returned to the capital, only to propose exchanging me for Lysandra's body. The crown prince, Jareth, had always liked Lysandra. He suggested using me as a hostage to get Lysandra back, even though by then, I was already 8 months pregnant. After much consideration, Zhang agreed to exchange me for Lysandra's body. My parents escorted me to Zhang, and the journey was so bumpy that I went into labor at the border and gave birth to a son. The emperor had said that if I gave birth to a boy, he would summon me back to the Eastern Palace. In order to get Lysandra's body back, my mother cruelly killed the child and announced that I had given birth to a stillborn. This time, as I looked at the tearful Lysandra and my mother, who seemed somewhat disgusted with me, I clenched the decree tightly in my hand. Mother hesitated, but then Jareth, disregarding all formalities, barged into the room and protected Lysandra behind him. "Madam, the one I truly wished to marry has always been Lysandra. I only agreed to marry Serafina because we had been betrothed as children. If you agree to let Lysandra marry me, and allow Serafina to go to Zhang, I will report to the emperor immediately and make Lysandra the crown princess." Upon hearing the crown prince's promise, my mother's previously troubled expression firmed up. "Fine. Then let Lysandra marry the crown prince, and Serafina will go to Zhang." She turned to me, and with an air of finality, said, as the elder sister, "You should naturally give way to your younger sister. The journey to Zhang is dangerous, and your sister is frail. How could she go? Of course, it should be you." But what mother forgot was that Lysandra and I were twin sisters, and I was only a quarter older than her, yet I had always been the one who was expected to sacrifice. I didn't argue, but silently removed my wedding headpiece and began packing to leave the city. Eloan, standing beside me, tightly grasped my hand. "Madam, what is this logic? This marriage was originally yours. You were to marry into the Eastern Palace in just half an hour. Why should you be sent to that den of wolves in Jong? Chapter 2. As soon as Eloan spoke, Lysandra dropped to her knees before our mother, crying, "Mother! Since my sister does not wish to go, then I will go instead. The journey is long, and I may never be able to serve you again." Hearing her cries, my older brother stormed into the room and kicked Eloan in the chest with all his might. "The master hasn't spoken. So what are you, girl, doing speaking out of turn?" Eloan was knocked to the ground and fell into my arms, a red line of blood dripping from her mouth. Mother wiped away Lysandra's tears and gently comforted her. "Your sister is willing to go. She wouldn't refuse. See, she's already taken off her headpiece. Today is your wedding day. My dear, don't cry. It's not becoming for a bride to have a tear-streaked face." Mother and the others then took Lysandra to another room to change, leaving my brother to keep an eye on me, forbidding me from taking the headpiece or jewelry I had worn for today's preparations. Unlike in my previous life, this time the Lysandra family did not give me any dowry. They only allowed me to take Eloan with me to Jong. The wet nurse and the steward, having heard the news, came with the few dozen dolls of silver they had scraped together. The wet nurse gripped my hand and wept. "This won't buy you much," she sobbed, "but if you're hungry or thirsty on the road, don't be cruel to yourself, use it to buy something to eat." Before she could say more, my brother, already impatient, shoved the wet nurse aside and urged me to get underway. Half an hour later Lysandra was to depart. He still had to deliver me into the Jong army's custody and return to see Lysandra married. Without changing into a bridal gown, I was lifted into the Jong carriage and escorted toward Jong territory by the soldiers. As dusk fell, the escort halted. I lifted the curtain and saw my brother at the front, haggling with the officers. Eloan, ignoring the bruises where she'd been kicked, scrambled to her feet and cried excitedly, "Miss, the young master still cares for you. He must be worried you'll suffer in Jong. So he's come to give you some silver to take with you." I watched my brother stride toward the carriage and felt a chill. It was never going to be that simple. Sure enough, he did not hand me silver. He pressed a small vial into my palm. When I uncorked it, the scent told me what it was, a tiny vial of potent poison. Mother said. He told me, "Lysandra is now the crown princess. If you go to Jong and marry well, fine. But if you're given to some scoundrel, it will disgrace our family and Lysandra. This will make it easy for you to leave." Indeed, Jong had only demanded a bride from the Lysandra household. They had not specified whom. Whether I married well or badly depended entirely on the emperor's decree. In the last life Lysandra had been given to a eunuch. Mother had fretted and sent money to make Lysandra's life easier. For me there was nothing but a bottle of poison. I rolled the vial between my fingers and let out a cold laugh. I flung the poison into my brother's face. The liquid ate a patch of skin from his cheek. He howled and spat. "Serafina, have some shame. If you fare badly in Jong, don't expect me to save you." I smashed the vial on the ground so the shards chimed. "I won't expect any rescue," I said loudly. "From now on, consider me dead. Whether I prosper or perish, do not come looking for me." I severed the road home and parted from my brother for good. The Jong soldiers read the scene plainly that I had been abandoned by the Lysandra household. That night, they loitered by my carriage whispering, "She's an orphan discarded by Chu. Who will she be offered to? Likely some low man. This match was meant to shame Chu. What good end could there be? She's beautiful, though. Wouldn't mind if she fell to me." They talked and schemed until one bold leader crept up to my carriage in the dead of night. He snarled and threw himself on me. Even as Eloan pounded him, he refused to let go. "You're alone," he snarled. "You'll have no luck in Jong. Better come with me, I'll protect you on the road." I felt for the silver needle hidden in my sleeve while one hand played along his body as if to soothe him. He took it as encouragement and grew more feverish, ripping off my outer robe. As his hand crept beneath my clothing, I drove the needle into a vital point. He went limp against me, eyes wide but unable to move. One well-placed prick, and he would be crippled for the rest of his life. I threw him out of the carriage, then faced the soldiers crowding in. "I know what's in your hearts," I told them. "But the Jong Emperor's moods are fickle. If he cares nothing for me, so be it. But if he desires me for his harem and discovers I am not as I seem, it will be you who die. Try sneaking aboard again and this will be your fate. On the road I had made up my mind, if I could win the emperor's favor, perhaps I might become a prince's or a minister's wife. If not, the worst case was being given to a eunuch or cast into the state brothel. But if I survived, I would seize any chance to change my fate. 3 months later I stood within the Zhang imperial palace. The emperor did not glance my way. He said coldly, "Mordecai, you have served me well these years. I grant this woman to you." Mordecai, the same eunuch who had taken Lysandra in my previous life, had written to the Lys and were family once he'd married her. Mother had been hurt but dared not protest. She had given him silver and begged him to treat Lysandra kindly. In this life he wrote to Lysandra's household again, but his reply bore no gold, only my mother's reproach. She wrote that I had enjoyed wealth for years and, faced with such disgrace, should have taken my own life. How dare I still have the nerve to ask the family for anything? Mordecai read her letter aloud, and when he realized the Lysandra household had abandoned me, he beat me savagely. Then he summoned dozens of guards and sneered, "I may be emasculated, but I can ensure you still enjoy yourself. You needn't thank me, just bring me plenty of silver from now on." He sold me to those guards. I tight and my clothing as the men closed in. I had apprenticed under my grandmother in the rudiments of medicine. Handling a handful of men was not beyond me. I slipped a silver needle from my sleeve and, as the first guards reached to embrace me, I plunged needles into several of them with brutal precision. Their screams and the sight of them collapsing created chaos. While they scrambled to see what had happened, I crashed into Mordecai, shoved him over, and dragged Eloan toward the exit. One guard swung a great blade that sliced into Eloan's back. She shoved me forward and, clutching Mordecai's leg, cried, "Miss, run. Run out of the palace and go as far as you can, that's the only way you'll live." Rain pelted down, mixing with the coppery scent of Eloan's blood. I ran through the palace grounds not knowing where to go, only knowing I had to run to survive. In my panic I collided with a young man. I did not see his face clearly. I only fell to my knees at his feet, begging him to save me and to save Eloan. He bent and looked at me, scooping me up in his arms, and before he could act, Mordecai's shriek cut through the storm, "Your Highness the Crown Prince! What are you doing holding such a filthy thing? Throw her out at once." This was none other than the Crown Prince of Zhang, Percival. Back when he was a hostage in Chu, I had met him a few times and had once asked him what life in Zhang was like. He had been kind, explaining in detail, and promised that if there was ever another opportunity, he would take me to Zhang to see it for myself. I never expected that our next meeting would come under such circumstances. Me, now the wife of a eunuch, and he, Madame Sai, a high-ranking crown prince of Zhang. I struggled to free myself from him, my mind dazed as I noticed the mud that stained his clothes. But then, Madame Sai, a thought flashed in my mind. I remembered Eloan. Eloan was still trapped behind, still hadn't escaped. I begged Percival to save her, but Mordecai covered my mouth and smiled obsequiously. "I beg your pardon, Your Highness. I didn't mean to disturb you. This woman is the Emperor's gift to me, fresh from the palace. She hasn't yet learned how to behave properly." He twisted my arm behind my back, his voice cold as he muttered, "You've been running around in the middle of the night, disturbing the Crown Prince. You can expect to die for this." Percival unsheathed his sword and severed the hand that Mordecai had placed over my mouth. Blood splattered across my face, but it was quickly washed away by the rain. Mordecai collapsed to the ground, howling in pain. Percival lifted his sleeve to wipe the blood from my face. "Didn't you want to save someone? Get up. Take me to her." But Eloan was already dead. She lay on the palace path, her back marked by a deep gash that nearly split her in two. Rainwater poured into the wound and flowed out, staining the blue bricks around her. I approached her and cradled her in my arms, checking for any signs of life. When I found none, I stood up, intending to throw myself against the wall and follow her in death. Eloan was gone, and with her, I had lost the last of my support in this world. Noticing my suicidal intent, Percival moved swiftly and grabbed me, pressing me against the palace wall. "You want to die?" Go ahead. Die right now. Do you hate your family for abandoning you? Do you hate your fiancé for casting you aside? If you die now, when word gets back to Chu, you'll be the laughingstock of their daily conversations. You were supposed to be the crown princess. But now you're a eunuch's wife. And you can't even manage that. No dignity. No courage to live, you'd rather throw yourself to your death. Did I hate them? Of course. I did. I could already imagine Lys and telling our mother about how I had thrown myself against the wall. I could already see her disgust. As for father and brother, they would no doubt dismiss it with indifference. She's dead. So what? How does it matter? Could we bring her back? They might even try to comfort Lysandra, claiming that I had degraded myself and that my death wouldn't tarnish her position as the crown princess. Percival let go of me, and I leaned against the wall to steady myself. He spoke to me again. If you want to live, come with me. I'll give you a title, but you'll have to serve me. There are too many casualties at the front. You were trained in medicine, so you can be of some use to me. Zhang was a war-hungry kingdom, and Percival had been leading armies to annex neighboring states. However, the army's medical skills were lacking, and as a result, the number of soldiers dying in battle kept rising. My grandmother was skilled in treating battle injuries, and I had spent over 10 years learning medicine from her, mastering most of her techniques. Percival had heard of my medical expertise, which was why he decided to spare my life. He asked for me to be made the crown prince's consort, intending to keep me by his side. However, the Emperor Zhang disapproved. I was originally from Chu, and now I was the wife of a eunuch. If I married Percival, it would only shame his identity. Seeing Percival's displeasure, the Emperor added, "If you truly wish it, you can make her a concubine instead, and keep her by your side." After our marriage, I traveled with Percival as he continued his military campaigns, and that was when I realized how deeply the power in Zhang had already shifted into his hands. He was no longer the weak hostage who once talked about travel stories. He was now the true ruler of Zhang. It wasn't until I became pregnant that he temporarily halted the wars and took me back to the palace to rest. And it was at this time that news came from Chu. Jareth would bring the crown princess Lys and to visit, as a gesture of goodwill between the two kingdoms. For these years, Chun had remained quiet, hoping to appease Zhang and survive by any means necessary. This visit was also meant to show their sincerity in forging an alliance. As a concubine, I was not allowed to go out of the city to welcome the emissaries. Bored, I wandered around the inner palace, and just as I was about to head back, I heard a haughty voice behind me. "Mother, why do I feel like I'm looking at my sister?" "Oh, it's really my sister. The one who married a eunuch, isn't it?" A maid tried to warn her about my identity, but was interrupted by the sharper voice. "My sister is pregnant. Yet married to a eunuch. How did she get pregnant? Could it be she's carrying someone else's child?" Chapter 5. When I left Chu, I severed all ties with my family. Even after becoming a consort to the crown prince, I never sent them a letter, and they assumed I was merely surviving under the eunuch's rule. But Lysandra, after becoming the crown princess, had completely transformed. The once gentle and meek woman now became sharp-tongued and venomous. Seeing me now, she seemed to turn and to humiliate me. I turned my head and saw her standing with our mother. I considered leaving. When mother saw me trying to escape, she became agitated. She pointed at me and said, "I knew you were spineless. If Lysandra were in your shoes, she would never stoop so low. She would have ended her life to preserve the family's dignity. How could you ever compare to Lysandra?" I looked at my mother in despair, recalling how, in my past life, Lysandra had flattered and cajoled the eunuch, hoping to ensure she had a better life. In this life, however, she was forcing me to end my life for the sake of their image. Lysandra pushed mother aside and boasted, "Do you know? I'm about to become the Empress of Chu. Soon, Mother will sigh. You won't even be worthy of kneeling to clean my shoes." She leaned close to my ear and whispered, "When Chu swallows Zhang, you'll be nothing more than a despicable slave of a fallen kingdom. Don't even think about claiming to be my sister." After saying that, she turned to leave, but then she saw Percival rushing toward me. She quickly curtsied to him, But Percival ignored her and moved to help me. What are you doing running around when you're pregnant? Don't you know the banquet is about to start? You're here alone. What if something happens to you? Only then did he turn to Lysandra, a smile forming on his lips. This must be your mother and sister. Right? Funny, hadn't so wide sigh. This is the first time I'm meeting my mother-in-law. Lysandra's smug expression immediately faltered. What? Mother-in-law. But Serafina married a eunuch, didn't she? A maid stepped forward to explain that I wasn't the wife of a eunuch, but a consort to the crown prince. Percival supported me and replied. Yes, having fulfilled my obsession. She's a consort, but I have no formal wife. And I won't ever have one. Serafina will be my only wife. At this moment, the power dynamics between Chu and Zhang were clear. Chu could never compare to Zhang. Every year, Chu had to send tributes to Zhang to beg for peace. Jareth, indulgent and weak, paled in comparison to Percival, who was renowned for his bravery and military prowess. Given this contrast, despite my status as a consort, I held more dignity than Lysandra. Lysandra's eyes filled with jealousy as she bitterly regretted that it wasn't her who came to Zhang to form the alliance. Now, because of her position, she had to swallow her anger and curtsy to me. At the banquet, I saw Jareth again. After years apart, he no longer had the youthful vigor he once did. The indulgence of drink and pleasure had drained his vitality. And as he saw me, his eyes briefly brightened. He seemed about to speak, but he hesitated, his mouth unable to express the words, filled with unspoken longing. After the third round of drinks, he stopped me in the garden as I hurriedly tried to leave, saying, Serafina, how have you been all these years? His gaze was fixed on me with obsession. Since you left the kingdom of Chu, I've been thinking of you day and night. I often wonder if I had chosen you back then. You are gentle by nature. And the two of us would surely have been a perfect match. Like celestial partners. Serafina. Back then, we had an engagement. And I was so blinded that I chose Lysandra, that jealous woman. I had known it all along. He had never truly loved Lysandra. It was only because he had never been able to have her that he idealized her so much. In this lifetime, it wasn't that he couldn't part with me. It was because I was married off to the kingdom of Zhang. And Lysandra had been pressuring him daily. That was why he started too long for my gentleness and compliance. He took a step forward, wanting to take my hand, but my mater stance quickly encircled me, separating us. Behind him, Percival wore a hollow smile, his eyes fixed on me. Lysandra's face turned betrayed. She tore off the jade pendant from her waist and angrily hurled it onto the stone path, shattering it. She seethed. Jareth, I want a divorce. Lysandra dragged Jareth away, and Percival walked over to me. You could have walked faster, avoiding his pursuit. Why did you wait here for him? Is it because you can't let go of an old lover? Not at all. I smiled softly. Didn't you want an opportunity to lead troops into Chu? I'll give you that chance. Since ancient times, it has been incredibly difficult for ordinary couples to divorce. Let alone for someone like Lysandra to get a divorce from the royal family. It was almost a slap in the face to the royal family of Chu. After returning to her room, Lysandra caused a huge uproar, forcing Jareth to leave. My mother had no choice but to intervene, trying to mediate. Lysandra, we're in the kingdom of Zhang, not Chu. You should show some respect to the crown prince. Look at your sister. Even though she was married off to the kingdom of Zhang, she became the crown prince's consort. Didn't she? Isn't it because she knows how to endure? A loud crash of porcelain was heard, followed by Lysandra's wailing. It's all your fault. If you had let me marry into the kingdom of Zhang, I wouldn't have to suffer like this. He already has dozens of concubines in the Eastern Palace. And now he says he can't forget Serafina. If I had been the one sent to marry into Zhang, I could have become the crown prince's wife, not just a consort like that useless woman. My good marriage and husband have all been ruined by you. Mother was struck by Lysandra's accusations and temper tantrums. But she only sighed deeply, unable to understand why her once obedient daughter had become like this. After a long pause, she finally spoke. No matter what, Serafina is your sister. Now that she's gained power, she won't ignore you. You need to get along with her. In the future, you must make an effort to maintain your relationship. And besides, she's pregnant now. If she gives birth to a son, it will help our entire family. I couldn't help but sneer, thinking of the child that Lysandra had killed in my previous life. A mater starred approached with something in her hands, asking if I would go see my mother. I shook my head. Since they were conspiring against me, they would undoubtedly come to find me on their own. I didn't need to seek them out. Sure enough, just 2 days later, Lysandra dropped her arrogant demeanor and came to find me with a friendly smile. She handed me a bowl of red date and white fungus soup, grinning. Sister, do you remember how grandmother used to make this for us back home? Since grandmother passed away, I've been trying for a long time to make it, but it never tastes quite the same. Please try it. I took the bowl of soup, and before it even touched my lips, I smelled a strange medicinal odor. Looking at Lysandra's forced smile, I knew she hadn't listened to my mother's words. Mother had asked her to make peace with me, but because of jealousy, she had brewed a poisonous concoction, intending to kill me. Well, that was fine. I had been waiting for her to try and harm me. I tilted my head and drank the soup in one go, only to immediately spit out a mouthful of black blood. The pain in my abdomen was unbearable, and I fell to my knees in front of Lysandra. She hurriedly helped me up, her face full of feigned concern. What's wrong? What happened? Sister. What's wrong? Don't scare me. Who is trying to harm you through my hands? It was a common poison in the kingdom of Chu. When the royal physician arrived, he mixed the antidote according to the prescription I gave. I was temporarily safe, but the child in my womb could no longer be saved. Percival came rushing in and saw me miscarrying on the bed. He frowned and grabbed my hand. You knew it was poisoned. So why did you drink it? To give Zhang a reason to send troops into Chu, I gasped, struggling to breathe. Lysandra is foolish. She's spoiled by our mother and doesn't know the dangers of this world. Only by using her could I gain this opportunity. If she's gone, we'll never find another chance. Lysandra, along with Mother and Jareth, had already been captured. Even the diplomats who had come with them were detained outside the palace. Mother, struggling to come in and see me, knelt before me, begging me to stop Percival from declaring war on Chu. Percival said nothing. Mother pleaded, Seraphina, this is a matter between you and your sister. Why must it escalate into a war between two nations? Your sister only did this out of jealousy. Why can't you, as her elder sister, be more tolerant? Hearing the same words I had heard countless times before, my anger flared, and I coughed up another mouthful of black blood. Percival could no longer hold back. After calming me, he snapped, What do you mean? Sisterly rivalry? The crown prince of Chu killed our heir to the throne in Zhang. This is an national grudge. I, Percival, will never let this go. I advise you, Seraphina, to be careful with your words. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what I will do to Lysandra. Seraphina needs rest. You needn't visit her again. My mother's precious youngest daughter had finally caused a catastrophe, and I had lost my first child. Staring at my now flat stomach, I couldn't hold back my tears after Percival left. At the end of the letter, he wrote that soldiers were meant to die on the battlefield, and that strong nations naturally annex the weak, but his parents were getting old. And when he entered the capital, he wondered if there would still be a way to lead them a path to safety. I set the letter alight on the candle, and as the army prepared to move forward, winter approached quickly. We had to reach the capital before the snow fully set in. When the first snow fell, we finally arrived at the capital. But instead of Jareth and Lysandra, or the noble families, we were greeted by my parents, who were leading sheep. My mother looked up at me, her hair now mostly white and just 2 short years. She stammered, Seraphina, you're back. You've come home? I, a soul reborn into lifetimes, had no home to return to. Behind my parents, the city gates were tightly shut. I realized that Chu still had no intention of surrendering, that they had merely sent my parents out to vent their anger on me. Percival took them back to the military camp, and when my father saw me, his tears flowed freely. He grabbed my hand, sobbing, Seraphina, This is all my fault. I've been away defending the borders. And I never cared about how you were doing. I allowed you to suffer. Now that you've returned, we can live together. And never be separated again. I interrupted my father's tears. Father. You know what I've suffered. You know about the marriage alliance. You know I was married to a eunuch. You know the small cruelties. And the larger betrayal when I was sent away to another country. You just didn't care for me. You loved Lysandra more. You could leave the city for her. But you never came to the border to send me off. To stand by me so the guards wouldn't dare to mistreat me. My father was left speechless by my words. His head bent low in shame. He muttered, yes, heavily too. Yes, having fulfilled my sesh. I knew everything. But I never took care of you. My mother cut him off and turned to me. Serafina. If you have any grievances, speak them. If you agree to withdraw your troops, we will make it up to you. Look inside yourselves. We never wronged you. Why do you hate us so much? Her hair was now white. And in my memory, she had always been a domineering woman. Her back straight. Never giving me a kind word. Now, she was hunched. Asking me what was wrong. Promising to make it up to me. I lowered my hand to her white hair. Mother. Have you ever once regretted sending me to Jom for the marriage alliance? My mother always thought it was a family matter. As though if I were appeased and withdrew my troops, everything would go back to the way it was. And they could continue their lives carefree. She didn't realize this was no longer just a family issue, that there was no turning back. She looked at me, a tear falling from her eye. I had no choice. We only had 2 daughters. And someone had to go for the alliance. Your sister grew up with me and couldn't leave. And aren't you living well now? Jong has given you enough status and honor. We can make it up to you. Whatever you want. We'll give it to you. The courtyard you once lived in. Your father and I have cleaned it up again. Waiting for you to come home. My father agreed. You're the elder sister. Lysandra is younger. So naturally, you should make way for her. We've never been biased. When the emperor came to propose to you when you were young, we accepted it for you. Serafina, withdraw your troops. And come home. Percival sneered from the side. Yes, having fulfilled my ancestion. She's the elder sister. She should give way to her younger sister. But if the younger sister makes a mistake, will you blame it on her youth and immaturity? Lysandra is nearly 30 now. Is stirring up trouble between 2 countries still just a matter of her being young and ignorant? Your acting is truly pathetic. My parents were left speechless. And I helped my mother up. I understand that Lysandra has always been close to you. That she knows how to speak sweetly. So naturally, you dote on her. How about we go see how your beloved daughter treats you? The capital had long been filled with our people. We had not attacked yet, because we were waiting for Chu to surrender on its own. I led her through a back gate and quietly entered the palace. It was no longer as luxurious as before. The place was shrouded in darkness. Following the intelligence we had received, I found where Jareth and Lysandra were staying. They were packing their belongings, preparing to escape when the opportunity came. Jareth said, "Are you sure killing Serafina's parents will appease her?" Lysandra scoffed. "Of course. My mother has always favored me. Serafina must hate her. I deliberately sent her away to delay things. Once those old pigs are dead, Serafina will be satisfied. What if they don't die?" "They'll die for sure," Lysandra said. "I've given them a potent poison. In another hour, they'll be dead." Her laughter rang out, full of malicious delight, as if she took pleasure in her own cruelty. My mother, in that moment, seemed to lose all hope, her eyes dull as she realized the kind of daughter she had raised, a selfish woman who only cared about her own interests. She turned to me. "Serafina, if I had chosen to raise you, would you have treated me this way?" But she never chose me. And I would never choose her. I pushed her aside, intending to leave, but her hairpin fell from her head and clattered to the stone floor. Lysandra immediately became alert. "Who's out there?" "Guards. Come. See who's outside." The remaining soldiers in the palace quickly gathered, and the surrounding candles were lit, illuminating the room. Lysandra saw me then, and a cruel smile twisted her lips. Well, you've come to deliver yourself into my hands. The soldiers began to close in on me. But before they could grab me, my mother shoved me out of the way. She turned and tackled Lysandra, her hands tied around her throat, and shouted at me, "Run! Mother will protect you. Run!" I watched as the sword pierced her body. She coughed up black blood and slowly collapsed onto Lysandra. But even in her last moments, she didn't release Lysandra's throat. She was determined to die with her. I ran through the palace, soldiers chasing me from behind. I released the signal flare in my hand, and as the fireworks lit up the sky, the army of John entered the palace gates of Chu, ending centuries of conflict. I stood in the hall, watching one noble after another from the kingdom of Chu being escorted in. Finally, handing Foso Wyapsai, Lysandra and Jareth were brought in. Lysandra had a crimson bruise around her neck, and she sat beside Jareth, her eyes filled with rage as she listened to the weeping of the beauties behind her. Lysandra still refused to admit defeat, clinging to whatever dignity she had left. "What will you achieve by winning? You're nothing more than a discarded son. Someone whom anyone could abandon. Even your fiancé chose me over you back then." Before her words had even finished, Jareth cried out in anguish. He rolled to my side, eyes wide with pleading. "Serafina, she's lying. If you'll have me, I'll stay by your side as a guard, watching over your safety day and night." "I don't need a guard. Not even a eunuch. I just want to see you," I replied. Upon hearing that Jareth was willing to become a eunuch, the old ministers couldn't suppress a sneer. Lysandra's face turned pale, mortified by the public humiliation. I lowered my head and handed him a sword. "Fine. If you truly care for me, kill your queen, and let me see your sincerity." Without hesitation, Jareth stood up, took the sword, and walked to Lysandra's side. In an instant, he drove the blade through her heart. Lysandra didn't even have time to scream before she died at Jareth's hands. Jareth had wanted to survive so badly. To him, what was Lysandra compared to his own life? His own survival was the most important, wasn't it? Kneeling before me, Jareth presented the sword, waiting for my praise. I casually wiped the blade clean and smiled. "I was just kidding. I don't need a guard. And I certainly don't need a eunuch. I won't keep a wolf by my side." And Percival was no soft-hearted person. He had Jareth executed in the cruelest way, and his head was displayed on the city wall for all to see. With that, the entire 9 provinces were absorbed into the kingdom of Zhang, and the world was unified. I became the Empress of Zhang. My mother had not died. The blood she had coughed up had actually alleviated the poison, saving her life. When she woke up, she had become a fool. My father, on the other hand, died from the poison, taken by the hands of his beloved youngest daughter. After my mother's mind broke, it seemed like she was trapped in the moment when she had just given birth to the twins. At that time, she had given birth to both Lysandra and me. Unable to care for both children, she had sent one to our grandmother's place. She had looked at us again and again, reluctant to part with either of us. But in the end, with tears in her eyes, she sent me away. "This one is the older sister. The conditions at the border are harsh, so let her go there." Grandmother lived far away in the borderlands, and our mother and I were separated for 10 years. As we parted, she stood behind holding Lysandra, watching the carriage leave with a lingering gaze. She had said, "When Serafina returns, I will make it up to her. I will treat her as well as I can, find the best husband for her, and ensure she lives a joyful life." Perhaps back then, she hadn't anticipated that we would end up like this. I kept her locked away in the cold palace, unwilling to visit her again. When spring came, I watched the twins play in the back garden, the harem empty except for me. Sometimes, I couldn't help but feel lonely. Percival had not taken a concubine since then. His focus was never on the harem but on the kingdom's affairs. He wanted to become a ruler remembered through the ages. One day, while I was in the palace, I saw my mad mother somehow manage to escape the cold palace, followed by a group of guards. She stared at the twins for a long while before finally picking up the eldest and gently combing his hair. The mater stands around her stood warily, watching her closely, afraid she might harm the young prince. But my mother only smiled, placing the prince down and taking his hand. "All right. Serafina. Let's go home. This time. I won't send you away. We'll be together as a family. Always. After speaking, she turned, collapsed, and died as spring arrived. In the days of food shortages, my stepmother would feed me rice with lard every day, which made me the fattest woman in the village. This was all because the leader's mother wanted to find a fortune-bringer daughter-in-law to protect her son from bad luck. Before long, the leader's mother came knocking, asking for my hand in marriage. But everyone in the village knew that the leader had been injured on the battlefield and was incapable of intimacy. After I rejected the proposal, my stepmother became furious and hung me in the well. To get you married off and bring in some money, I fed you lard rice day and night, turning you into a fat sow. And you have no gratitude, she shouted. You waste my rice. And now your brother doesn't get meat. Maybe it would be better if you just died. When I opened my eyes again, I realized I had agreed to the marriage to save my life. A month later, I was vomiting on the street, and the villagers saw me. They mocked me, saying I had been stealing from someone. The usually aloof leader suddenly scowled and said, "She is my wife. And she carries my child. What's wrong with that? Dead girl. Are you marrying or not?" The familiar harsh voice snapped me awake. I gasped heavily and found myself kneeling in front of my stepmother. Hazel. With my hands painfully bound by a rope. Was this a rebirth? Before Hazel's rattan whip could fall again, I quickly cried, "I will marry. I will marry." She froze, her spiteful face filled with astonishment. After a moment, she grudgingly dropped the whip. At least you're sensible. The dowry from the Ethan family is enough for your brother to marry 3 wives. For someone like you, a fat pig, marrying the leader is already a blessing from your ancestors. I lowered my head and said nothing, but my heart pounded wildly. In my past life, the soothsayer had said that a fortune bringer would protect the leader, Ethan, from bad luck. So, Hazel had fed me lard rice every day, turning me from a delicate girl into the fattest woman in the village just to sell me for money. But when I had refused the marriage, terrified of becoming a widow, she had tortured me to death by hanging me in the well. Now, I knew that survival was the most important thing. Seeing me silent, Hazel grinned maliciously. "I heard that Ethan was injured on the battlefield and can't perform. Anyway, for you, having fulfilled my obsession. A fat pig. It's good enough to have a title. Not like you can have children. Anyway." Before leaving, she kicked me. "Tomorrow, you go to his place. Don't try anything funny." I nodded without saying another word. This time, after I agreed, Ethan's family was overjoyed. The next day, I was carried into Ethan's family home in a simple sit-in chair, wearing a red wedding gown that barely fit. There were no firecrackers. No music, only the gossip of the villagers. I heard Ethan didn't even want to marry her. His mother forced him. Of course. Why else would he marry Mian? That fat pig? With such a fat bride, won't the wedding night collapse the bed? Shy. Quiet. Ethan can't perform. Marrying a fat pig hides the ugliness. If it were the old me, I would have been mortified. But now, I just found it laughable. These gossips had no idea how lucky I was to live again. Because I was so fat. The crowd burst into laughter as I arrived. Linda glared at the others, then smiled and dragged me inside. Ethan fought on the battlefield and accumulated a lot of bad energy. Now that you're here, our Ethan family will naturally treat you well. After I stood still, I glanced at Ethan standing in front of me. He was indeed much younger and more handsome than I had imagined. I thought he might treat me better, considering I was meant to bring him good fortune. But instead, he remained expressionless. His movements mechanical, as if he was carrying out a reluctant task. After the ceremony, he didn't even help me up but simply turned and walked away. The guests laughed louder. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They were mocking me. The fat bride who was even despised by the groom. But I wasn't upset. The rumors said Ethan was injured on the battlefield and couldn't perform. So he had no interest in women. It was normal for him to dislike me. Just as I was preparing to rest by myself, the door suddenly opened. Ethan's tall figure appeared at the doorway, holding a food box. "Eat." I was a little confused and instinctively asked, "Are you staying here tonight?" He paused, not turning his head as he replied, "No." But the next second, he suddenly collapsed to the ground, trembling all over, his forehead drenched in cold sweat, muttering, "Don't come near. Cover me. Artillery fire." I instantly realized it was a battlefield trauma episode. Seeing him shaking uncontrollably, I rushed to help him to the bed and tightly embraced him. "It's okay. The war is over." After a while, I felt his tense body slowly relax. But I was burning with heat. My gaze fell on Ethan's pants, and I realized that Ethan wasn't incapable after all. In fact, he was very much. He tightly gripped my collar. Looking dazed, I thought, even if he didn't like me, as long as we were married, I'd finally live a good life, right? With that thought, I couldn't help but move closer. And Ethan and I spent the night together. The next morning, the space beside the bed was empty. I only remembered that as Ethan left, he didn't look back and said, "Don't hug me again." I froze for a moment, then nodded. Got it. Anyway, being here, well fed and housed, was far better than waiting to die with Hazel. Life after the wedding was quieter than expected. Ethan rarely spoke. Most of the time, he was at the army, and when he came home, he only ate quickly before retreating to the study. It was Linda, though, who noticed that Ethan seemed healthier since our marriage and was kinder to me. She never urged me to have children, probably because she thought Ethan couldn't perform and had no expectations. It worked for me. I was content. A month later, Ethan returned from the army with a delicate woman by his side. The moment she saw me, her eyes reddened, and in a soft, sweet voice, she said, "Ethan, you're getting married, and you didn't even tell me? But your wife is so huge. How did you even meet her?" That's when I learned she was Chloe, a military doctor from Ethan's army. She was tall and slender, much prettier than me. And when Ethan heard her comment, he simply crossed his legs and remained indifferent. Linda, noticing my displeasure, laughed and handed me some money. Mian, go to the town and buy some nice clothes." I was about to nod when Chloe insisted on coming along. I didn't have a good impression of her and instinctively rejected, "I can go by myself." But Ethan set down his newspaper and spoke with authority. "Let Chloe come with you. Don't embarrass me." Embarrass? I felt uncomfortable in my heart. Did he think I was embarrassing? But no matter what, I agreed. As soon as we arrived at the clothing store, Chloe shouted, "Bring out the largest size you have and let us have a look." Other customers turned their heads, their gazes filled with curiosity and mockery. While I was trying on clothes, a sudden wave of nausea rose in my throat. I covered my mouth, pretending to gag. Chloe, feigning panic, cried out, "Sister-in-law, you're not pregnant, are you?" The others quickly gathered around. "Look, isn't that Ethan's new wife? The fat Mian? Did she just throw up? Could it be? Just married a few days ago, and she's pregnant already? I thought Ethan couldn't. Could it be? She cheated already? Pregnant? Could it really happen so quickly?" I felt miserable from the nausea and didn't manage to buy any clothes. I rushed back home in a hurry. I braved myself to enter the yard, where I saw Ethan talking to several men in military uniforms. Chloe walked up to him with an embarrassed expression. "Ethan, sister-in-law's been throwing up on the road, so we came back early. I think she might be pregnant," Chloe added. Upon hearing this, Ethan's face darkened instantly. He abandoned the conversation with the officers and quickly walked toward me, grabbing my wrist. "Come on. We're going to the clinic." I widened my eyes, my heart pounding. "That's impossible. Let's go check," he interrupted, his brows furrowing deeper. When I didn't move, he suddenly called me by my full name. Mian, since you married me, have you slept anywhere else besides that narrow couch in the bedroom?" My heart sank to the pit of my stomach. He didn't believe me either? The officers in the yard exchanged glances, and Linda's face turned ashen. I took a deep breath, said nothing, and walked straight toward the clinic. As I passed Chloe, She leaned close to my ear. Her voice low. Actually, Ethan's the one who likes me. You're just a warm bed for him. I froze. So that's how it is. It seems marrying me was just for the sake of warding off bad luck. I quickened my pace. And somehow, I felt calmer inside. After all, I hadn't done anything wrong. What was there to fear? The news spread faster than I thought. The whole village knew about it. And Hazel wasn't surprised. As soon as she saw me, she yanked my hair and dragged me out. Mian. I've always known you're promiscuous. But I didn't expect you to be so indecent, even after marrying the commander. You're doing such a shameful thing. You're disgracing the Mian family. With that, she looked at Linda as though it was only natural. No matter what. She's married into your family. The bride price can't be refunded. Seeing Hazel so worked up, the villagers gathered around at the door, muttering, Ethan, your wife Mian. As the wife of a commander. Cheating is a crime. You should throw her out and dunk her in a pig's cage. Some whispered. She's so fat. Who knows if she was already pregnant when she got married. I think it's more likely Ethan can't perform. She doesn't want to be a widow. At that moment, Ethan, Pathfine, who usually appeared cold and aloof, suddenly walked up to me, blocking the critical stares. She is my wife, and she's carrying my child. What's the problem? The whole room fell silent. Chloe stared at him. Her eyes wide, tears welling up again. Ethan. You. I was also stunned. But soon, I realized he was likely just protecting his family's reputation. I smiled and waved my hand, lowering my voice to say, don't you know whether you can perform or not? Upon hearing that, Ethan's eyes instantly turned dangerous. Before he could say anything, the doctor came out with my report. Mian has gastritis. Not pregnancy. Also, have you been eating lard regularly? Everyone froze. I saw a hint of disappointment in Ethan's eyes. I nodded. Before I got married, I had lard rice 3 times a day. Upon hearing this, the villagers immediately turned their gaze to Hazel. I see your son eating meat every day. How come Mian's been eating lard rice? Stepmothers like that, marrying off their daughters for money. Hazel's face turned green, then pale, and she cursed as she left. Who are you people to meddle? Chloe, seeing this, suddenly ran to me, crying, I'm sorry, sister-in-law. I misjudged you. It wasn't intentional. I looked at Ethan, hoping for some reaction from him. He just gently patted Chloe's shoulder. Chloe, don't overthink it. Pack up. Tomorrow, you'll be going on a mission outside the province. Chloe gave me a smug look, then sobbed. This mission might last half a year. By the way, Ethan, how to sign in? My room application went through, so we can talk all night. A room? Ethan glanced at me but didn't speak. I suddenly felt a pang of loneliness. But it didn't matter. I hadn't married Ethan for him anyway. After dinner, as I was about to close the door and sleep, Ethan suddenly lifted me over his shoulder. I was surprised. Could he actually carry me? Before I could react, he tossed me onto the couch. Why didn't you stop me from applying for a room with Chloe today? I couldn't help but laugh. I can't join the army. So how could I stop it? Besides, you're the commanding officer. And I'm just a fat woman no one likes. What could I do to stop it? You can sleep with anyone you want. He paused for a moment. Then, let out a low sigh. He pressed himself against me, breathless, and said, Mian, do you remember what you said this afternoon? I gasped. What? Before I could react, he buried his head in my neck. Didn't you already try if I can perform? Why not give it another go? I froze. What was he doing? At that moment, Chloe suddenly knocked on the door. Fine, Ethan, let's leave tonight. Ethan hesitated. It's true. He loves Chloe most. Just as I started to get up, he turned off the light, pulled me back into his arms. What are you doing? Don't tell me you really want to be a widow? Outside, Chloe's knocking grew more urgent. Ethan, are you in there? I waited for him to push me aside and comfort her. But he didn't move. Instead, he held me even tighter. The knocking stopped. And Chloe's footsteps faded away. In the room, only our breathing remained. Why? I couldn't help but ask. He grunted, pushing harder. There's no reason. Tomorrow, I'll be leaving for about half a year, Ethan said, his tone calm but distant. During that time, please take care of my mother. So that was it. He wanted me to stay home and play the part of the dutiful wife, tending to Linda. Not that I needed to be told. Linda had always treated me kindly. Even if Ethan hadn't asked, I would have cared for her. For some reason, though, Ethan was unusually intense that night. He didn't stop until dawn. Though I was plump, my body ached all over by the time he was done. And even the bed frame bent under our weight. By the next morning, just like before, he was gone without a word. When Linda entered the room and saw me in that state, her eyes darting between my flushed face and the visibly warped bedboard, she froze for a moment. And then broke into a look of pure elation. Mian, you really are our Ethan family's lucky star," she exclaimed. "Ever since you came, my son has finally recovered." My cheeks burned. I didn't dare respond. A month later, while I was hanging laundry in the courtyard, that familiar wave of nausea suddenly returned. I slipped away quietly to the clinic in town. After a careful examination, the doctor smiled. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." I was stunned, then overwhelmed with joy. That very night, I sent a letter to Ethan, telling him the good news. Days turned into weeks, and my belly slowly rounded. Outside, gossip spread like wildfire. "Who knows if it's true? She hasn't been married long. And Ethan's already got an heir?" I heard from his mother that the bedboard in their room actually bent. Linda only laughed at the whispers, her affection for me growing tenfold. Every day she came up with new dishes to nourish me. Mian, you must take good care of yourself and the baby," she said warmly. "This is the Ethan family's precious treasure. Once Ethan comes back, he'll treat you and the child well." During those months, Hazel showed up more than once, pestering Linda for more dowry money. "You were supposed to be childless," she argued shamelessly. "Now my daughter's giving you a grandson. The dowry should at least double. Otherwise, I'll take her back." Her audacity made my blood boil. "My husband is a regimental commander in the military district," I snapped. "If you dare threaten me, have you even thought about what that means for your son?" She didn't seem to expect such defiance from me. But at the mention of her son, she flew into a rage, pointing at my nose and screaming, "Ungrateful wretch! Cursing your own brother? Why don't you just die?" Before I could reply, Linda stormed out, broom in hand, and swung it at Hazel. "I don't care how you used to treat Mian," she shouted, "but she's my daughter-in-law now. If you dare come here again, I'll have Ethan arrest your son." After that, Hazel never dared to show her face again. Half a year later, the military trucks finally rolled back into the village. I waddled toward them with my 7-month belly, heart pounding with excitement, only to see Chloe step down from the vehicle alone. She froze when she saw me, eyes flicking to my stomach in momentary surprise before she schooled her features into a calm smile. Then, Madame Walsai, pulling out a small red booklet, she waved it proudly in front of me. "Ethan and I are married now," she said sweetly. "He asked me to tell you personally. Stop waiting for him." The world tilted beneath me. My knees nearly gave out. Linda hurried over just then, and when she saw the marriage certificate in Chloe's hand, Ethan's photo beside hers, she stammered in disbelief. "What are you talking about? Mian is carrying Ethan's child. How could you possibly be his wife?" Chloe's gaze lingered on my swollen belly, her lips curling in mockery. "I've already tested it myself," she said coolly. "Ethan can't perform. How could she possibly be pregnant with his child?" Her words sent the gathered villagers into an uproar. "I knew it. Ethan got injured on the battlefield. He's not a real man anymore." His poor mother refused to believe it. Said Mian was carrying Ethan's heir. Mian's nothing but a heartless liar. Ethan's already pitiful enough. And she still cheats on him? Exactly. He barely left. And she's already taken another man to bed. Linda's face went pale under the barrage of voices. I clutched my belly protectively, shouting, "It's not true. This is Ethan's child. If you don't believe me, Ask him yourself. Chloe scoffed. Oh. Wake up. If you wanted to see you. This fat. Pathetic woman. He'd be here right now. Then she turned to Linda. Her tone softening. Mother. I'm actually the daughter of the regional military chief. Now that Ethan's married to me. He's about to be promoted to deputy commander. Surely you wouldn't ruin his future for her. Would you? But Linda wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes were fixed on my stomach, uncertain. Frightened. Seeing that. Chloe smirked and handed me a stack of letters. My hands trembled as I opened Ethan's handwriting. When I hesitated, Chloe read aloud with cruel precision. I have no relationship with Mian. In this life, I will take Chloe as my only wife. Then she leaned close. Her voice dripping with contempt. Ethan also told me to tell you if you want to stay in the Ethan household. Fine. Just stop embarrassing yourself. With that, she turned and drove away, leaving me standing there under the weight of 100 accusing eyes. I stayed silent the entire night, my heart twisting in agony. The next morning, Linda threw a bundle of my belongings at my feet. I should have known better, she said coldly. How could I have been so blind? You fooled me once. But no more. Get out. From today on. The Ethan family has no daughter-in-law like you. I stared at her, unable to believe that a few words from Chloe had shattered everything. I couldn't lose this home, not after everything I'd endured to earn it. Taking a deep breath, I said firmly. Once I give birth, you'll see whose child this is. If it's not Ethan's, I'll drown myself in the pig cage. Linda sank to the ground, sobbing. It's not that I don't want to believe you. Mian. But Ethan. He truly. I cut her off anxiously. Ethan is fine. He's not what people say he is. If he wasn't capable, why did he claim this baby as his that night? For a moment, Linda faltered. My words made sense, and with only one son, she had every reason to cling to hope. Wiping her tears, she took my hand and said, Mian. It's my fault. Stay here and rest. If this child really is Ethan's, no matter boy or girl, this house will be yours. Don't worry as long as I'm alive. Chloe won't drive you out. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Chloe's words, stop embarrassing yourself, felt like nails driving deep into my heart. But how could she say that when the night before Ethan left, he was so affectionate with me? How could he possibly utter such words? Or was it true that he preferred women like Chloe tall and slim? The thought twisted my heart, the pain like a knife cutting through. After all, Chloe was the daughter of the district commander. And compared to her, I was indeed unworthy. I gritted my teeth and silently vowed to take care of my health and lose weight after the baby was born. Even if not for others, at least for myself. Days passed, and my belly grew bigger. In my 3rd trimester, Linda, feeling sorry for me, wouldn't let me work in the fields anymore. Bored, I began to experiment with cooking. To my surprise, I was quite good at it. My sauerkraut buns had such a strong fragrance that it wafted far outside the house. When Hazel took a bite, her eyes lit up. Mian. These buns are even better than the ones sold in the county. Have you ever considered selling them? I was stunned for a moment. And suddenly, an idea sparked in my mind. The next day, I set up a small stall. To my surprise, business boomed. The villagers, already sympathetic to my situation, flocked to buy. My buns were delicious. And soon, long lines formed. Baskets of buns were sold out in no time. And as I counted the money in my hands, I could hardly believe it. I had really made money from selling buns. I gave part of it to Linda. Mom, take this and fix up the house. Linda waved her hand and instead handed me a few hundred yuan. Mian. This is what Ethan sent back before. I'm giving it to you. As a way to make up for his wrongdoings. I didn't say anything. But I didn't refuse either. 2 months later, I gave birth to a daughter. She was tiny, wrinkled, but incredibly cute. Linda, holding the baby, was so emotional that tears welled up in her eyes. This girl looks exactly like Ethan when he was little. You can tell she's his. During my confinement, Linda not only helped take care of my daughter, but also watched over the bun stall. She worked so hard that her chronic leg pain flared up, and she cried out in pain at night. I felt terrible. So I dug out the acupuncture book my birth mother had left me. When Linda was asleep, I quietly studied the acupuncture techniques. A few days later, I tried giving Linda a few acupuncture treatments. To my surprise, they worked. Her leg pain improved by more than half. Word got around, and the villagers began to view me in a new light. Ethan was married to Mian first. Whether they got the marriage certificate or not, that's not why he built a family elsewhere. Looks like his so-called mission was just an excuse. It was really just a way to climb the ranks by marrying the district commander's daughter. Per Mian. Ethan's been gone for 2 years. And she's still staying with his family, taking care of his mother. Where can you find a wife like that? The tides were changing, and I felt a warmth in my heart. Soon, let out a low sigh. My bun stall expanded. I used the money I had saved to rent a storefront in town with Linda. We worked from dawn to dusk, and without realizing it, I had lost weight. I was slimmer, fairer, though not exactly beautiful. Still, everyone started calling me the Bun's Beauty. I touched my face, suddenly feeling like my rebirth had not been in vain. I thought life was improving, and I would live happily with Linda and my daughter. But when my daughter turned 5, Ethan returned. He had barely stepped onto the doorstep when a little bundle clung to his pants leg. My daughter looked up with her cute little face and asked, "Uncle, having so mired sigh. Are you here to buy mommy's sauerkraut meat buns? They're really delicious." Ethan stood frozen at the door, staring at her for a moment. His gaze shifted from my daughter to my face. His eyes filled with disbelief. Mian? His voice trembled. "Is this really you? And this child?" I held my daughter tightly and said nothing. Linda walked out of the house. And when she saw Ethan, her face immediately darkened. The hopeful expression she once had vanished, replaced by annoyance and indifference. "What are you doing back here?" Ethan opened his mouth to answer. But before he could speak, I interjected. "Where's your beautiful wife?" "What beautiful wife?" Ethan almost immediately retorted, his eyes fixed on my face. Mian. What are you talking about?" Hearing this, my daughter suddenly flung herself back into my arms, clutching my clothes tightly. "Mommy, who is he?" Ethan's gaze flickered between me and my daughter. Suddenly, having fulfilled wires, he strode over, his voice urgent. Mian. You had my daughter. And you didn't tell me." Before I could respond, the villagers gathered around, speaking all at once. Mian already wrote you a letter. What are you pretending for?" "Yeah. Didn't you marry Chloe? Didn't you get promoted to vice district commander? Why come back now?" Seems like the district commander's daughter didn't want him anymore, so he came back to Mian. Ethan looked confused, his brows furrowing as though he were about to crush a mosquito. Linda, holding my daughter, spoke coldly. "I'll be content if I can just watch my little treasure grow up. If you really want to keep Chloe, then don't come back." "Mom," Ethan urgently interrupted Linda. His face flushed. 5 years ago, I was on a classified mission. That's why I couldn't come back. I had someone tell you all. Didn't I? What are you people talking about?" He pointed to my daughter, his voice trembling. "This child, she's mine. How could I leave her behind?" Looking at his expression, he didn't seem to be lying. "So why, brother Ethan?" At that moment, Chloe rushed over from behind him, her face full of anxiety. "This mission's ending. But there's another one right after. My dad said you couldn't come back yet. What's going on?" She looked up and froze when she saw me. Ethan's face darkened immediately. "Chloe, 4 years ago, I told you to come back and explain things to them. What did you say?" Chloe, now sure that it was me, widened her eyes. "You. 5 years ago, I was on a classified mission. That's why I couldn't come back. I had someone tell you all. Didn't I? What are you people talking about?" He pointed to my daughter, his voice trembling. "This child, she's mine. How could I leave her behind?" Looking at his expression, he didn't seem to be lying. "So why, brother Ethan?" At that moment, Chloe rushed over from behind him, her face full of anxiety. This mission's ending. But there's another one right after. My dad said you couldn't come back yet. What's going on? She looked up and froze when she saw me. Ethan's face darkened immediately. Chloe. For years ago, I told you to come back and explain things to them. What did you say? Chloe, now sure that it was me, widened her eyes. You. What happened to you? I'm asking you. Ethan's voice lowered again. What did you say back then? Linda frowned. She said you married her. And told me and not to wait for you anymore. Ethan shook his head frantically. I didn't. The villagers immediately understood. Looks like the district commander's daughter was lying. We all heard it. She even said you found me and too fat. Yeah. She even said she tried it with you. And you couldn't perform. And she said me and's baby isn't yours. But look at this child. She looks just like you. How could she not be yours? Ethan's face grew darker by the second. Me and's child is my child. Aside from me and I've never touched another woman. Ethan gripped my hand tightly. His eyes filled with guilt. Me and do you not believe me? I stared at him. A swirl of emotion stirring within me. Our daughter was already 5 years old. And for these 5 years, she had watched other children with fathers. And longed for the same. Of course. I wanted to believe him. Chloe, seeing the tension, cried out. Her voice defensive. Our mission was classified. There were unavoidable reasons for what I said. I was only protecting you. Ethan took a deep breath, then reached for our daughter. And anon. I'm your father. But our daughter clung to Linda, crying out. Lolly doesn't have a daddy. Everyone says Lolly's daddy doesn't want her anymore. Ethan's hand froze in midair, and pain washed over his face. Before Chloe could say more, Ethan's voice cut through the tension, cold and firm. Chloe, go home. Tell the military commander I'm not taking the next mission. You're not going? Chloe's voice rose in panic. Fine, Ethan. Are you willing to throw away your future? Her face flushed red with anger as she pointed a trembling finger at him. You better believe I'll go straight to my dad and have him remove you from your post. Ethan didn't even glance at her, simply responding with a cold fine. His eyes were fixed on me. His voice steady yet filled with conviction. For 5 years. I've thought about you every day. More than once. I've wanted to abandon everything and come back to find you. If I can't even see you, then I don't want to be the regimental commander anymore. Anyway, head in way. The country is stable now. I froze. I had no idea. All these years, he had carried me in his heart. Chloe, utterly incensed, threw herself into a fit of sobs before storming out. Only then did Ethan learn what had happened 4 years ago. He pulled out the marriage certificate with Chloe and explained. This marriage certificate is fake. There was indeed a secret mission. And I had to pretend to be married to Chloe. We had to live in the same house to keep up appearances. I didn't expect Chloe to bring the certificate back and stir up trouble with it. Seeing me silent, Ethan's expression grew anxious. Mian. I swear. I never touched her. I couldn't have imagined that the aloof Ethan would stand before me, saying such words. It became clear to me that Chloe must have hidden all the letters I sent him. I swallowed hard and handed him a freshly steamed sauerkraut bun. I understand. Go wash your hands. And let's eat. That night, he held me quietly from behind. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked, when did you start? Do you remember 10 years ago? He interrupted. His voice soft but firm. I came back after a mission. Sitting in a wheelchair. Everyone avoided me. Afraid of me. But you looked at me and smiled. Calling me a hero who protected the country. I remembered that moment. But I never realized something so small would stay with him all his life. He pinched my cheek. Then smiled suddenly. I still don't know why you gained so much weight. But I still want to marry you. That fortune teller? I had someone act that out. I turned sharply, meeting his gaze. You. Before I could say more, I leaned close to his ear and whispered. Ethan. After all this time, what are you still capable of? That night was even more intense than the one 5 years ago. The next morning, Ethan took me to get our marriage certificate. Holding the bright red booklet in my hands, I felt as though I were in a dream. Then, let out a low sigh. He put on an apron and stood in my sauerkraut bun shop, calling out cheerfully. Our daughter gazed at him, her voice soft. Mom, is that really my daddy? I nodded. Excited. Our daughter dashed out. Yay! Lolly has a daddy now. Just as we were happily selling buns, several black sedans pulled up outside the shop. Chloe stepped out, her arm linked with a stern-looking middle-aged man. She cried out, Dad, Ethan gave up the country's mission for a woman. Tell me, should he be punished? A chill ran through me. I quickly stepped forward. Military commander. Ethan would never refuse a mission from the country. But the next moment, Ethan laughed. He wiped the flour from his hands and spoke calmly. Military commander. I completed the mission a long time ago. Chloe froze. What do you mean? My father is the one who gave you the mission. When did you finish it? Her eyes darted around, and her voice took on a sweet tone. If you agree to leave me Anne and marry me, I can have my dad forgive you. Before anyone could react, a group of officers in uniform surrounded them. The leading general saluted Ethan. A fine, Ethan. Thank you for your hard work over the last 5 years. The evidence you provided has proven that you're on. Abusing his position as military commander. Accepted bribes and sold important secrets to enemy countries. Posing a severe threat to our nation. We are here today to bring him to justice. Chloe's face went deathly pale. What? What investigation? The military commander exploded, his hand shaking as he pointed at Ethan. You ungrateful wretch. All these years, I've treated you like my own son. And you've been doing this behind my back? I've promoted you, given you everything you wanted. I have only one daughter. And I know she likes you. I wanted you both to live happily. How could you do this to me? Ethan looked at him coldly, without a trace of emotion in his eyes. Military commander. You've never wronged me. But you have wronged the country. The military commander's eyes widened, his lips trembling. Unable to speak, Chloe screamed in disbelief. No. This can't be. She rushed to Ethan, crying as she questioned him. Ethan, how could you do this to us? You were so kind to me. Didn't you like me? Ethan shook his head, squeezing my hand tighter. The only person I've ever liked is Mian. He turned to Chloe, his voice steady and serious. I've told you this before. Chloe stood frozen, still trying to argue. But you were so good to me. That was because of the mission, Ethan said, his tone unrelenting. I needed to get close to you to gather evidence. Before she could say anything more, the officers stepped forward and handcuffed both Chloe and the military commander. The military commander struggled. I don't accept this. I've done so much for the country. Spilled blood for it. You can't treat me like this. The officers remained silent, pushing them toward the car. Chloe shot Ethan one last glance, her eyes filled with despair and resentment. The leading general stepped up to Ethan, pulling a medal from his pocket and pinning it on Ethan's collar. Bafon Bukanda, we promised you, after the mission was completed, we'd let you go.